Welcome back to this week's edition of Modern Tech and Transformation. My name's Carla Hartman, and I'm here with Michael Brown. And I think this is going to be a really fun episode. We are going to talk all about LLMs, and we'll get into some other cool AI that's out there at the end of this. But we're just going to kind of geek out for a little bit. In this episode, we're going to focus on 4 of the LLMs. So OpenAI, which is going to be your ChatGPT 3.5, 4.0, Google Bard, which is backed by Gemini, and Gemini Ultra, which is exciting multimodal stuff similar to OpenAI, Meta's Llama model, and Anthropic's Claude model. So let's kick it off. Let's talk about OpenAI. So likes, dislikes, that's what I started using. ChatGPT 3.5, have not paid for the 4.0 yet, but I know you have.
Oh, I paid for it.
So let's just talk about that LLM, what we think, what are our thoughts for people interested in jumping into using one of these?
Yeah, I mean, so I think the first thing is go do it. Like, they're free. Bard.google.com, chat.openai.com, and really start trying to, ask questions. Just, experiment, play with it. And you're going to find things, you're going to find useful things. But what I've seen over the last year since, this really, it was kind of bubbling underneath the surface for a couple of years. And then, once I guess one of the big things was in 2017 when Google released their transformer, white paper talking about how to build transformers, then this really started exploding, right? And so November last year, ChatGPT went online, and people started using it, and it's just exploded from there, right? It was funny at the conferences. I think we talked about an episode or two ago. I was talking to one of my colleagues, and I'm like, you go to these conferences and you listen to the keynotes, and it's blah 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 AI, blah 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 LLM, generative AI. And it's just over and over. It's all they're talking about, and how are we enabling it? How are we making it safer, more secure, private? And so there's just a lot of hype around it, but at the same time, it's one of the only things that I can remember that's living up to the hype, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't look at it and go, ugh. You look at it and you go like, this is getting crazy.
Well, for a while, we looked at it like, oh, this is theoretical. I was hearing all about it just in theory, like, oh, we asked AI to land a plane, it landed it upside down because we didn't give it the right parameters. Right. So for a long time, it was theoretical. Right. But yeah, now.
Well, no, I mean, that's the thing.
Now it's exciting.
Remember Watson on Jeopardy? IBM Watson on Jeopardy?
Yes.
So there was like an entire team of people doing that. Mm-hmm. And that was really impressive. Now, ChatGPT just does that for free. So that's how fast it's moving. So, the way that IBM Watson was doing it and how ChatGPT just does it with 10 million people all at the same time, it's moved that much. But, I guess what we've seen in the last year is the models don't hallucinate anymore, or what they do, they hallucinate much less. You can ask a lot of different questions and get really good, solid information back. But you can also, there's an entirely new area of computing to learn, which is called prompt engineering. Like really understanding how to formally ask these models and get the best opportunity for that model to answer you in the correct way. Right? There's a format to it. And there's a mechanism to it, and understanding how to put the model in context, ground the model, and how you want it. You start learning about it, and you hear about one shots, multi shots, meaning that do you ask it a series of questions in the context to kind of get it primed so it can start answering the questions correctly, or do you just ask it cold one time and the response it gives you back, what's the quality of it?
That's what I like to do. I like to ask cold. I like to really think about the prompt engineering, but I'm a marketer. So I think about personas. This is how my mind works, right? Yep. Think about personas, what voice, but then I like to refine.
Yeah.
So I like the one shot, cold shot, and then I refine from there. I don't do the series. Maybe I should try that. But that's just how my brain works.
Right. Well, but that's really the cool thing is you have to start thinking about these models. And if you don't know, this is definitely not a technical explanation, but the large language models, in general, they're not, even though they seem like they're real, it's like a real person talking to you, it's not. It literally goes, so if you say, if I were to ask you a question, like it's two humans talking, if I were to ask you the question, why is the sky blue? Like that was my question to you. And you would go,
let me ask ChatGPT because I don't have that answer.
Well, no, but you might say, okay, ChatGPT asks this question. Why is the sky blue? That's my prompt. Based on this prompt, right, it makes this into a mathematical expression. Based on this mathematical expression, what is the most likely word to come after this? That's what it's asking.
Yeah.
What is the most likely word to come after this? And you might say, as a human, I might say, the sky is blue because, and that's what ChatGPT is doing. It says okay, then there's a 99% that sky, there's a 99% is, and it just goes through and iterates. That's all it's doing. Every single word is going, what is the next word based on this context? And so it keeps referring back to itself as it's building out that sentence. And that's all it's doing. But it produces, because of all the data that it was trained on, it produces these responses that are really, they're amazing at this point. And so when you look at that, initially, we saw some of the really, really funny incidents of, Microsoft's model. It looked like it was going crazy. It was making these crazy responses. That's pretty much stopped, right? Unless you're really trying to prompt the model to do something odd.
Yeah.
But just for general everyday use, asking questions about your business, asking questions about your life, asking questions about programming and technical information, the models are really doing well now. Yeah.
So what are some of the greatest features, you think? I know you've used it.
Oh yeah.
So what do you like about it? Let's just start there.
So number one, it was first,
Yeah.
right? And you start using it. So the first thing, I guess, is the biggest difference I think the thing that we're going to see the most change in is right now, all of them, not all, they are focused on text input, text prompts, and then spitting the information back out based on text. And that's how the models are built. So, what we were seeing early on is you could ask it to give you the answer to a programming question or a scripting question, and the OpenAI model would produce one type of script, and then another model, like Bard or something, would produce the script in a different way, and you would have to go back and forth and compare because a lot of times they just didn't work right off the bat. What's getting interesting now is most of the time they just pretty much work. Right, so it's getting better. When you start talking about multimodal, so being able to provide a picture and the model understands the picture and you can ask it questions about the photo, or you can provide it a website, and you can ask questions about the website.
Are they doing that right now in OpenAI?
It's so you read blog posts about it and you read news about it, but it's not something that OpenAI has the ability to browse the web. It's got plugins, and you can browse the web. It has a DALL-E plugin, and so you can do different things with it, but it's not all under one single interface. You kind of have to go to different sections or use different plugins to be able to get that feature and functionality. And so what we think we see with like the Gemini Ultra, it's not available publicly yet, at least as of earlier today.
This episode, yeah.
Yeah, I was looking. It's it's really kind of all in one interface. You give it a photo, you're talking to it, and it's interacting with your context, right? And that's a huge. It makes it more real to the person. It makes it easier to identify with.
Yeah, and the voice recognition. So the first AI assistant was most people used. The first one I used, I don't know if this is most people, but it's what I used, was Amazon Alexa.
Yep.
Have them all over my house. Some people might feel some way about that,
Yep.
but I'm not doing anything I shouldn't be doing in my home, so I don't care who's listening. But the answers are just okay, right?
Right.
But at the time, they were great. Have you used the voice functionality on OpenAI or
yeah.
Gemini, and how does that compare?
Well, so I started using the Chat GPT app, right, on Android and Apple, and it gives you this natural language. So you can ask it questions in a natural language, and it responds to you in this flawless voice. And you can pick the voice. It's so I use Big A. We call her Big A because you don't want her to wake up. So and it's almost like I'll be in the car and I'll ask questions, and it's almost like a little, somebody's teaching me and telling me information as we're driving down the road. So yeah, I really believe that being able to have natural language input and ask questions. I'll be at the computer working with a customer on a call, or working, having a work session, trying to solve a problem. And I've actually tried to use my computer's speech to text input in a Chat GPT window or in a Bard window, and it's still, computers don't really do that well. It's so much better. It's so much. I don't know why the phones and like the Google and the Chrome tab, I don't know why they're so much better than like how Windows does it. But I would love to be able to just working on a problem and be able to ask ChatGPT, how do I do this or how do I do that, and have it answer me, and just being able to have that as I'm working in context, to be able to ask that question and that information be available in another window, that would be phenomenal. So I've experimented with that and I haven't quite worked it out because there's some technology limitations, but it's just around the corner, I think.
So, I believe both of us are on the same page. We both utilize and believe that Google and OpenAI are the front runners. Anthropic's good too, right? I use Claude if I need to upload documents. And if it's not just more text, I guess if I'm like, hey, I'm using this as more of a repository with up to 5 documents in a certain format, things like that. What do you think Anthropic's going to come up with next?
So I don't know what they're going to come up with next, but what they're doing today is, so those models are available. So if I want to use OpenAI's model, I have to go to chatgpt.com or openai.com, or I go to Azure, and Azure has the agreement with OpenAI, and you have the GPT models available in Azure. So I can start building applications or building platforms so that I can use the OpenAI model to answer questions about my own business data or personal data. If I go over to Amazon, they've got Amazon Bedrock. I've got my Anthropic models in there, I've got my Llama models in there, and so what you really have to look for is, we've talked a lot about, and this might be a whole other session, we've talked a lot about what the models do and how they work, but what we haven't talked about is what do they cost to run?
Okay, we can dive into that, we have time.
So, when you look at one of these models, the number one, I'm just going to make up a number. I want to put, 20 terabytes of documents into a model, like vectorize it and make it work inside of a model. That has a cost, right? And it's that word token, right? You hear the word token a lot. And I kept asking the question, what is a token? Like I wanted to know what it was. And what I'll tell you is the best answer I found, it's about 3/4 of a word. In general. So take the number of words that you have in a document, multiply it times 0.75, and that's about the number of tokens that you have on average, right? So you average out all the words. And so all the models, when you go to a cloud provider, it's how many tokens to ingest, and then inference, how many tokens when you're asking questions, and what it pulls back. That's all measured in tokens. And so some models cost a lot per token versus other models that cost less per token. And so one of the things that you have to experiment with when you're ready to start using it inside of your enterprise is experimenting with the models and understanding, are they providing, I want to use a cheaper model to run for inference. I want to use a cheaper model to run for loading all of my data. So you go with a Claude 2 model or a Llama model or Amazon's Titan model, the new one, the cost is massively different between all of those when you look at it.
What's the most expensive to the least?
I don't know.
Okay. We need to do some research there.
So you definitely need to do some research, but that's one of the things that you look at, and so the cloud providers are giving you tools to be able to. So Amazon Bedrock, for example, I can actually set up, inside of Bedrock, I can set up multiple models. I can ask a question, and I can do that analysis on the model performance and the model cost, and then I can go do experiments. I can set up a set of questions, and I can start asking those questions, and the models, and I can optimize based on what the models cost and how the models perform based on my data. So those are all exercises that you really need to go do with your own data, so that you can understand and get the cost. Because, for example, if I've got an application that's going to have a lot of customers hitting it, it's going to see a lot of traffic, I'm going to want to optimize that model. And I'm going to want to ground it in a very, like, maybe make the context much smaller, so that it just won't cost massive amounts of money each month. Versus if it's for my finance team and I want to give them like a very large, in-depth, like full Claude 2 model, and let them be able to ask in-depth questions and go deep with it, and just and let them have that capability. So you'll be able to deploy those models in different ways.
So I have not used Llama that I know of. Maybe I have used it when I've been on Meta platforms. I have heard that it's the best at generating portrait-like images because look at the data it's being trained on.
Yeah.
What do you know about Llama? Let's dive into Llama a little bit more. I am not as familiar with that.
So I've been experimenting with Llama with coding.
Okay.
So especially in Python coding, I find we do a lot of automation using the cloud SDKs, and Python was my language of choice. You can, so when I started my cloud career, I said, you've got to choose a programming language that you can use to codify in the cloud, right? To build automation, to build infrastructure, and I chose Python, and it's now become a first-class citizen in both automation and data, and so. Once you have that, used to take me, forever just to sit down and build the functions and use the Python platform to do my work. Now, I have all of these options. I started with ChatGPT, asking ChatGPT. I would be, looking at learning how to use, data science frameworks like pandas inside of Python. And I would go find examples, and I would pull them into a GPT, and I'd say, what does this code do? And it would just list it out. And so now I've gotten to the point to where I'm going back and forth between Llama, Bard, and GPT, and going, which one produces the best results, or which one produces the results that work most often.
And is there a front runner yet, or still an experimentation?
They're all pretty good.
Good.
Right? They're all pretty good.
That's good.
And so I haven't, I might just have a history bias to GPT because I've used it first.
Yeah, I'm a big Bard fan right now.
So yeah, as soon as Gemini was announced, I dove back into Bard. Same thing, just really, and it's phenomenal as well. So I don't know. There's just a lot of options right now.
So let's talk about the elephant in the AI room, which is. What's X going to be? A lot of the LLMs out there are productivity gain AI, right? The everyday AI. Do we think it's going to be game changing? He hasn't released it as of this episode, so I'm just waiting to see what Elon Musk is cooking up.
I was not going to buy the blue check, right? I wasn't going to buy a subscription to Twitter/X, and he's going to make it available to subscribers. I dropped the money.
Has he made it available? I'm not a subscriber yet either, but I might for that.
No, I'm super excited to see. He's been hinting, in his feed, asking different questions. He's like, well, X answered it correctly. So I'm really looking forward to this. I mean, it's just the competitive nature of this area of technology is just blowing my mind in all seriousness. There's never been anything in technology. Like we've had the Y2K, we had ERP, we had, cloud. All of these things have happened and they've all been big, right? And it's the next big thing. There's not ever been anything like this. Like this is a unique time in history.
So we'll wrap up. I'm going to do a little bit of storytelling because Michael has not watched the new Julia Roberts
I have not.
movie on Netflix. I love Julia Roberts. Didn't know what I was getting into when I turned it on.
From Georgia.
When I turned it on over the weekend. But this piggybacks a little bit about Elon Musk. Not to ruin the movie, but in one scene, so spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, in one scene it deals with cyber hackers, right? Cyber warfare. All the Teslas off the lot, they're trying to get out of the city because someone needs medical attention. And they can't because they see cars piled up. They get closer, it's all Teslas. They get even closer, no one's driving them. They're all self-driving. So to block people from being able to communicate with each other, all these self-driving cars, electric vehicles were coming off the lot and running into each other to clog the roadways. So just another use of just technology, AI, where we're going in the world. Yes, it's really cool. It's really exciting. But there's also risks. I would have never thought of something like that. The creativity of the director and writers of that movie, amazing. But that's all we have for today. I'm going to leave it on that morbid note. But tune in with us, and we're going to talk about AI methodology in next week's episode, the crawl, walk, run methodology of implementing AI in your business.